Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today we are going to be going over Gems of War version 8.0. So the update just hit yesterday and we got quite a few new things with this. Unfortunately, a lot of it doesn't take place until the next PvP season, which will be taking place on Monday reset time. However, of course, we have the introduction of PvP seasons, we have a new currency of burning marks used for a lot of different various PvP rewards, and most importantly with this update, as it is named, it is based heavily around new Immortal Troops. So these are a brand new troop type that you can only use one of per team, but they are absurdly easy to get, despite them being as strong as basically a max mythic the second you get them, which is an interesting dynamic, as they are probably more common in getting a specific epic, basically, from the drop table, like if you were just go for a random one, compared to like legends or mythics or anything else, even though they're supposed to be a rarity above mythic. So really interesting. So as far as how you get them, you need burning chests. With that, you need burning marks. However, getting them is going to be pretty easy. You only need 10 immortal souls to unlock a immortal. This is absurdly easy, given that you basically have a 50% chance almost to end up getting immortal souls every single time you open up a burning chest. As far as getting burning marks to open these burning chests, we can't really show in-game these methods as we need the PvP season to occur. However, there will be a handful of ways to end up doing this. The main one is completing PvP goals. So there will be a bunch of PvP goals like kill X enemies, win X amount of battles, do like X amount of monolith fights. Basically things you're pretty much already going to be doing in PvP or wouldn't need to go too far out of your way for compared to the standard PvP gameplay loop. Some of them you might a little bit more than others, but most of them are just things you're automatically doing if you're already keeping up with like the standard dailies for PvP, and a lot of it will just get done automatically, and you just get free burning marks from doing that, as well as a few other resources. However, there's also a season pass. The season pass, the PvP season pass, is another season pass on the billion other season passes that currently exist within the game. I've heard rumor, or not rumor, but some people actually saw it in their game that it looks like it's going to be about 15 bucks to get the season pass, which personally I feel like is way too much. We currently don't know the full breakdown of loot within it. However, we do know some of the resources that exist. It'll mostly be PvP related resources, with the main bulk of the reward being burning marks and upgrades for whatever new immortal they add, as they will add a new immortal every single season, with there being 10 initially with this patch and a new one coming in every single PvP season, which lasts for 11-week duration, similar to that of campaigns, except they do not coincide at the same time as the campaign. You just follow their own 11-week system, unless they're going to sync them up at some point, which they might not, I'm not sure yet, because they're currently out-synced by like 3-4 weeks or so, based on when this patch is occurring. But anyways, if we go over to the Immortals themselves, we can see a full breakdown. You can get to them in two different ways. You can go to your troop menu and get to them as you normally would navigate to any troop and build into your team. However, you can also get to them nice conveniently on the menu here on the PvP screen. So to get here, of course, from the main menu, you just click on PvP. If you currently don't see PvP here, you might have it on a different tab, so click the other tab, click over to PvP, and then you'll be able to see them on your little sidebar here. And this will show every single immortal currently within the game and how many copies, or more so, how many immortal souls you have towards the new immortal. So, of course, we have 10 of them, a new one coming in with the next season. And let's go over them real quick. So these are starting already in power as basically a level 20 mythic, so basically maxed. To be able to get additional perks on them, you will need to go and get additional mortal souls. As we mentioned earlier, you only need 10 of these in order to go and get their first trait, or to end up unlocking them, I mean. However, you end up getting them maxed at 2,500 or so. This is not that bad, to be honest, relative to what we know about how many burning marks we'll be getting. As well as the drop rates of them. This will still take a while, like we're talking like probably a year, maybe even year and a half or so for the average player. Could be less if you pay a bunch, could be more obviously if you don't play as much, if you don't do PvP that often. However, it does look like it's shaping up to be like a year, give or take a little bit, which seems to be a lot of these new patch grinds, so honestly not too bad. I was definitely expecting this to be like a 3+ year grind, but from current rates that we've seen, though it could change as we see the actual numbers when the PvP season starts, it does look like this will be about an average year or so, give or take, grind, depending on if you speed up with money or if you're playing more casually, not doing the full PvP. But as far as all the perks, you get most of them by level 7, so you don't really have to worry about going all out with these. You will gain a good majority of their benefit from level 7. This will give you the Immortal, which is basically like getting a Mythic for free. You will get, which is really good for early game, by the way. This is going to completely change the early game meta as far as what you can end up running. As while a lot of these troops aren't too useful outside the context of their PvP location, to a brand new player who doesn't have barely any damage source or barely any troops at all, to be able to do like one PvP week and basically have every Immortal almost is going to be kind of insane. for how much power you're going to get immediately, especially compared to some other mythics. But they are weaker overall than a lot of mythics in the game, but we'll get to that once we get to the troops. But anyways, you get most of their benefits by level 7. This only requires, I believe it was 210 Immortal Souls. Actually, let me redo math. 60, 100, 150, 210, sorry, 280 Immortal Souls to end up getting basically every a perk from them. You have all 3 traits. They'll be as strong as a mythic, since they already start by that by default, like a level 20 mythic. You'll unlock the pet for them, which also counts for kingdom progress, and you'll be able to unlock the weapon for them. Keep in mind, this pet, weapon, and troop itself cannot be upgraded through normal means, like you can't use a pet orb on it or anything else. To be able to get them further than all the unlocks that you get by 7, you do have to go for all of the additional soul levels. However, most of these benefits aren't really going to be that needed in order for functionality. It's mostly just for kingdom upgrades and to make the troop just a little bit less worse. The most noteworthy unlocks, besides from getting to level 7, which gives you basically everything, is some of the ones later down, where you end up getting reduced mana cost. You get a reduced mana cost to normally a base of 30. They go down to 28 at level 22, as well as down to 26 at 29. They also get an unlocked Awaken trait, which I'm not sure if this is documented anywhere, but all of these do yet. However, this is interesting as far as its implications of what it could do. Assumably, this would make whatever their final trait is substantially better, though I don't sure if we know at this current moment in time what these will exactly be. But they do have potential to be a little bit power creepy in the fact that it is still really hard to get to level 30, but you will gain almost all their benefit by level 7, so ultimately shouldn't be too big a deal. And you can see another breakdown from the menu here. If we go over to upgrade, you can see the full breakdown of what you currently have, upgrading them directly, as well as just a bigger breakdown of what each one of them do beyond just this menu if you want to see the exact value of how many you'll need to end up upgrading them. But anyways, let's go briefly over every single one of these immortals. However, I do want to mention one out of order, as is so absurdly better than every other immortal that is pretty much the only immortal that should have the title of an actual immortal. These were supposed to be better than mythics. These are basically supposed to be the rarity above. Kind of like how boss troops were originally supposed to be the rarity above, and then they weren't. These were also supposed to be the rarity above, and guess what? They also aren't. However, there is one exception to this that is absurdly good and could bring back the skull meta to Gems of War, which hasn't seen as much play these days due to how strong Stellarix, Wand, and similar other aspects are, even Takshaka. Casting is just way stronger than skulls in the current landscape of the game. However, that could change a little. We have Immortal Oifer. He, for 30 mana cost, down to 26 if you have him at level 29, will convert all gems of a chosen color to Doom Skulls. This might sound a little bit familiar, because there is already a troop that almost does this. It is Keeper of Souls. It is a 15 mana cost brown-purple that has been around since day 1, 10 years ago, of Gems of War. And it took 10 years, but he finally has an upgrade. And Keeper of Souls still to this day has use cases just because of how controlled his skull spam is, compared to other options that are a lot less controlled because they just create a bunch onto the board or convert something. But be able to convert absolutely anything, really strong. And the fact that he does Doom Skulls, of course, Doom Skulls are a skull that does 5 additional damage, but they also explode a 3x3 around them. You do only get 50% of the mana of everything they explode. However, you're going to be able to board clear a ton. Since you get to choose, you get to auto extra turn, because you'd pretty much never cast this unless you have an extra turn available on the board. And on top of all that, he gets a free, basically full AoE true damage on top of that. Because just his ability alone, just that alone, just the convert, already enough to make him good. But he gets a bunch of true damage for free. And on top of that, they all have a special perk. Every single one of these immortals have 2 things that they have going for them. One is, when you use them in their corresponding PvP location, they will have double damage, and they all have invulnerable, making a very wide range of good invulnerable troops available in the game. Keep in mind, you only can use one immortal on your team, so you're not going to be able to stack multiple of these. However, you can stack it with multiple old immortal troops, for example, with things like Enraged Cairndia, Leonis Empire, as well as any future ones that we might end up getting through various means. You can synergize them there. However, you can only ever have one max immortal onto your team. You cannot have multiple immortals on your team. But on top of all this, he has probably the strongest out of any of these final trait, and how this thing gets even stronger, I don't know. It'd have to be like a 4x curse stun. But initially, it is a curse stun a random enemy when matching for an extra turn. This is ridiculously good, as it is a skull spammer that now has curse stun, all wrapped up in one nice little package. It does basically everything that you'll end up needing from a skull spammer. Has curse stun to get rid of anything that might be annoying, has really controlled skull spam, even has free damage on top of that, and can be used in a certain PvP location for even better effect. All of these are corresponded to a PvP location, and they do override that PvP restriction. For example, this guy is associated right now to Ancient Ket. but you might notice he is an undead from Midnight. So with that being said, if we can go find Ancient Ket real quick, which is over here, you might notice this is a Dragon's Claw restriction. However, if I go to a quick battle here, can I actually see this right now? I actually haven't tested this, but we're about to find out. So as you can see here, these are only showing Dragon's Claw troops. However, if I click on owned, I haven't actually checked this. I hope this does it. It should. It does. Okay, that's interesting. So this we already knew, I just wasn't sure if it would do it since we don't own it yet. But you may notice there is a certain troop that's showing up here that is not a Dragon's Claw troop. And that is, of course, Immortal Oifer. The main gimmick of these Immortals, at least relative to PvP, while you can use them in absolutely any game mode and still function, you could bring them anywheres. Only one, but you can bring them anywheres. They do have a special secondary effect in that they can be used in their corresponding PvP location, regardless of restriction. So we have a Dragon's Claw restriction, so we're normally using pretty standard, just quick kill Dragon's Claw team. However, we can add Midnight there. So obviously we can't do that right now. We don't have them. We can't until the season starts on Monday. However, if we had them, we just plop them right in. Boom. We can now build a scroll spam team on this. And it doesn't matter what the restriction is. It will always override it. Also, I want to check something since I checked that. Can you override the weapon too? I was wondering about this earlier. No, why? You can't override the weapon. That's exactly what I thought. They need to fix that. So all these Immortals have a weapon that correspond with them. Actually, I might as well go check that on the menu real quick since we're talking about it. But every single one of these Immortals has a weapon associated with them as well, as we talked about. You get at level 7 or 6, whatever it was. I think it was 7. So for Oifer, of course, is Oifer's Edge. However, even though the Immortal bypasses the restriction, for whatever reason, the weapon does not. The weapons function so weirdly in various game mode restrictions, but at this current moment in time, this might just be a bug. But currently, the Immortal weapon does not bypass the restriction, making them pretty useless, unfortunately. However, the Immortal Troop does. So the more useful one does. However, there is one of these Immortal weapons that does seem like it might have a use case. And of course, given how strong Oifer is, it is Oifer's Edge. This is a really interesting mechanic, as the mechanic kind of exists in the game. It converts all skulls to Uber Doom skulls, which are basically Doom skulls but even better. They explode a bigger range, a 5x5 without the corners, as well as doing 10 additional damage compared to a Doom skull's 5 additional damage. But this is already a troop that kind of does this for Doom skulls. He's from Drakzoom, and he converts all skulls to Doom skulls, but he doesn't do enough follow-up to really be worth using. This thing does a small amount of attack gain, but the biggest thing with it, there's two things that it has. If Oifer is on your team, it'll auto-gain extra turn. So the biggest issue with the guy that's currently in the game that converts all skulls to normal Doom skulls is he has no extra turn capability. Or very low, I don't remember. I think it's none. I'm pretty sure it's none. He just does like damage and then converts all to Doom skulls. So he has no follow-up. He can't gain extra turn. However, this, as long as you're not frozen, is 100% chance that you gain extra turn. So using this combination, going to be very, very strong. Unfortunately, actually, not unfortunately. The other part that you end up getting is at 9, which is level 25 on the Immortal. You also get Skull Storm on top of that, which will then allow you with 2 troops to be able to do Skull Storm and Uber Doom Skull Convert, a controlled Doom Skull Convert, and still have Curse Stun. And you'll still have Elementalist or whatever other hero class you want to use if you want to use triple damage burning or use the benefit from Elementalist. So it's going to be pretty insane what kind of skull teams you can end up doing with this weapon into Oifer. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, you can do most of this benefit by level 7. You won't have to Skull Storm until level 25 on the Immortal, but you do gain pretty much that team by level 7, just minus Skull Storm. So interesting to see how stuff like that pans out. Most of the rest of these are going to be useless since they do not override restriction currently. Hopefully, once they do, they'll have a bit more of a use case, because the biggest issue with them is they only use one color, and they're just generally not worth it for how high of a mana cost they have while only using one color. Even if the abilities were better, it's still kind of clunky. Even the one I just showed is still kind of clunky. Anyways, let's briefly go over the other 9 Immortals. All 9 of these other Immortals are unfortunately a bit less relevant. They will still be used in their corresponding location. For example, this one will be used pretty much always in Bay of Stars. This one pretty much always will be used in Mirage Expanse, so on and so forth. However, outside of these very specific PvP locations, all 9 of these other ones are going to be a lot more situational when you can actually build them into a team, let's say for, like Explore 12 or other various game modes. They all have pretty similar mechanics, at least initially, for these other 9 Immortals. They all have true damage, and they all have invulnerable on their second trait, which gives them immune to nearly everything in the game, which can be pretty useful. And of course, similarly, they can only be used one on a team. Anyways, let's briefly go over the other 9. So, this one right here, it deals a bunch of damage to an enemy and half that to all enemies below them. Boosted by blue dragon gems, and if using Bay of Stars, has double damage. Unfortunately, this thing basically always has to target first slot, and if first slot is stealthied, it loses a lot of its damage potential. For the most part, probably not going to be used outside of its given restriction. It does have Dragon Synergy, as well as Nexus Synergy, so it does have some potential there. And the other thing is it gets a 50% chance to create a blue dragon gem when its turn begins. I'm not sure how much this will be buffed up to once it has the final trait, but overall it doesn't seem like that's going to be worthwhile compared to the behemoths we've been getting in gem creation lately. And anything that's not 100% consistent at creating their gem, even if it's a really good gem, is generally not that worth it these days. Because you'd rather have a average gem that is 100% accurate than a below or just a different gem, even a better gem, that's only half the time going to happen. Because even if it's a really good gem, if it's not happening half the time, you're gaining zero benefit from it. So a lot of these just unfortunately are not worth it. Anyways, next we have ourselves the Immortal Capricorn. This deals a bunch of True Light Splash, which is 25% to adjacents, to 4 random enemy. Keep in mind, this Light Splash does do true damage Light Splash, not just normal damage, so all of his damage is true damage, including the 25% to the 2 adjacents off the Light Splash of the 4 enemies that he randomly targets. And if using the Expanse, he deals 5 more damage, and he also gets to explode 5 gems of a chosen color. This can make him a good alternative to things like Queen Zachi, given that he's basically the same rarity as Queen Zachi, in the sense that they are both absurdly easy troops that you can get very early on in the game. I can see this being a really good Submerge bypass early game true damage option, as you don't have to worry about Submerge. It has a lot of pokes, it has mana accumulation attached to it, and of course, is immune to basically everything. And his effect, while rare similar to the other one, is a bit better. It has a 50% chance to convert a red gem into a red mana potion. The fact that it's converting a red gem does mean it will never immediately get alignment, because you're just creating a red into a red, so you're not going to get any new alignment. However, if you end up destroying that, you'll get a bunch of red gems from that, which of course mana accumulates into him, and with your team synergy will likely mana accumulate into other things onto your team. So despite this being 50%, is a little bit better as far as final trait compared to Immortal Aquaria, and definitely has a lot more of a use case in general battles. One that is pretty unfortunate is the Immortal Empyrean. Of course, as we mentioned, all of these troops have a mechanic, or all of these Immortals have a mechanic, where they completely bypass the restriction of a PvP location. The problem with this guy being associated to Central Spire is, of course, in Central Spire, you are allowed to use everything. And this is a bit of a problem for him, because his whole mechanic where, oh, you bypass the restriction, means nothing here, as there's no restriction to bypass. So out of every single one of these Immortals, he probably got the worst deal, just in the sense that he doesn't get to use that entire mechanic that every other Immortal does, essentially. As far as his ability, it's not awful. It's very similar to the other one, actually. It deals a bunch of true splash damage, so 50% to adjacents, to 3 random enemies, boosted by burning gems, by a ratio. Also, by the way, all these boost ratios that these have, so minuscule. If you're a brand new player and you're getting these Immortals in your first week, first month, yeah, they're okay. But later in the game, where, most people generally are, these boost ratios are basically 0 extra damage relative to where damage is these days. And as we mentioned, if used in Central Spire, will deal double damage. But for the most part, compared to what you're normally using in Central Spire, I just don't see this being used. He does get to create 2 burning gems every single turn, so if you're doing a red heavy team, these burning gems do give you alignment since they're creating 2 fresh red gems. He does have a decent amount of score reduction into Invulnerable, so he is a bit tanky as well, while still having mana accumulation, so there is a bit of a use case that you can end up getting out of him, but for the most part, given that you can't multi-up on him, since you can only use 1 per team, probably not going to see that much usage in a game mode where you can already use everything in that area. Next, we have ourselves the Immortal Libera. It deals a bunch of true damage to all enemies, so the first full AoE one. This is a lot weaker than the other ones we've already seen, in the sense that this does get countered by Submerge. So any kind of Submerge team, which are pretty common due to Stellarix and similar things in the current meta of the game right now, not really that good. It gets hard countered by it, so you would need a hard counter on your team to deal with it. It then gets to, if used in Gearhorn, you'll have double damage, and it gives a bunch of life to all other allies. Biggest issue with this is, I'm not sure why they always do buff troops like this. Queen Aurora has had this issue for the longest of time, and I'm not sure why they keep doing this for some troops, mythics and similar, in this case an Immortal. But it gives a bunch of life to all other allies. The fact that it doesn't give life to itself, really bad. It's boosted by Angel Gems, but not enough that it's going to be relevant. It doesn't have any extra turn potential, so even something like Divinia is going to way out past this, because Divinia does random stats effects for your team. It can auto extra turn, has full board clear with Explode, while giving life to, I believe, itself as well, if not mistaken, everything on your team, not just everyone else. So unfortunately, this one's going to be really, really bad. There will still be instances where it will probably be your best option in Gearhorn, especially if it's some kind of restriction where you just don't have good mythics, you don't have good legends, you don't have good anything, or the kingdom itself doesn't have good options. Maybe it's just a restriction that just has absolutely nothing to use, not because you don't own them, but because there just isn't anything that can be used. So in those situations, these will come out. but in a standard battle, you are never using this. It carries 2 angel gems every single time its turn begins, which basically just helps the enemy, because you might be able to go and use them, but if you don't end up utilizing them, that's the enemy just getting 2 blesses, which is not ideal. Also, Bless is a little bit less redundant, or a little bit redundant in the fact that it has Invulnerable. I believe there's still an extra benefit you get. I can't remember. What was the one thing? There's like one thing that this thing doesn't bypass. Isn't it Mana Drain? No, you still have immune to Mana Drain. What is it? I always keep forgetting. There's like one mechanic other than Enrage that bypasses Invulnerable, but doesn't bypass Impervious. And off the top of my head, I actually completely forget what it is these days. But there's like one really weird thing that ends up doing it. But anyways, Enrage always bypasses both. But regardless, generally speaking, Invulnerable with Impervious is, or with a Bless on you, is generally irrelevant. It's not really going to do anything, since you don't need to block Curse or anything else, since you already have immune to it. But anyways, Immortal Lucifer. So as far as Immortal Lucifer, it explodes 5 gems, similar to the other one we saw a little bit earlier. However, they have 2 that do this, and I'm not sure why. This is a very old mechanic from when the game first came out, and very, very few troops have gotten this. It's mostly associated to troops in Divinian Fields. However, which is weird, because this one's from Shintang. But it basically does 0 damage as its lower threshold. Obviously it says 3, but 3, it's 0. These days, that is very much 0. That's almost like negative damage. You're basically giving the enemy HP at that point. But given that you have to give up your turn and everything to cast it. But yeah, it does 5 explodes, then does anywhere from about 0 damage to 80. And if used in Summer Isle, deal double damage. This is one of them that's ability is so horrifically bad that even in this restriction, you're probably not going to use it. You have to be down really bad. Like, have absolutely nothing for this to actually be viable in even its optimal situation of Summer Isle. It just does not do enough. It does have 4 times this spell, it does have 5 explode, but that damage is just way too low. I hope they buff them, because there's another one that's like this, and it's just way too low. It does have 40% reduction into Invulnerable, which is cool, and it does get to create a barrier gem, which can be good, but similarly to Blessed Gem, can end up giving your enemy just free barriers, and she does not have... Oh, actually, she does. She does have Dispel, so she actually does have a way of dealing with the enemy barrier, but why give the enemy barrier in the first place? We already went over Immortal Oifer. Long story short, he's the only Immortal currently in the game, as far as viability-wise. Out of all 10, 11 that we're going to be having, he is the only one that actually feels like an Immortal. He's basically a Zolgoth of the same color, just does functionality different. He's a mix between basically Zolgoth, Enraged Karandera, and Keeper of Souls. He basically does all that while having like Curse done. Well, I guess technically the other one has Curse. But yeah, it's basically that. But instead of Zolgoth that has Burn Freeze, this is Curse Stun, which honestly is better in most situations. Obviously, Curse Freeze is, Burn Freeze is good for triple damage burning teams. But all you have to do to make him into a triple damage burning team is just put Infernus on your team or anything else that can burn consistently all 4 enemies. And then boom, you got yourself a triple damage, curse, stun, controlled skull, triple damage burning team. So, yeah, all you have to do is just add an option. Just have hero in first slot, have this guy somewhere on your team, have a 4 times burner somewhere on your team, and then put a mana accumulator down. Boom, you got a team. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how team building goes with him, as he's the only one that's really going to be used everywhere. Like, yes, you can use him in Ancient Ket as well, but he's going to be used everywhere. He's not going to be used only in his restriction. Anyways, back to Immortals that are weaker than Epic Troops. We have this guy that does anywhere from 0 to almost 0 damage, and then does 2 for 3 random enemies, so even worse than the splash ones we've already been seeing. It's boosted by bleeding enemies, but at a ratio that is completely irrelevant. And if used in Broken Lands, deal double damage. Similar to the other one that has this variable, even in Broken Lands, you are never going to use this, unless you really have absolutely nothing to use. He does have the Invulnerable, of course. Interestingly, he does have Skull Dodge, so you get to completely dodge things. This isn't as relevant as it would normally be. Skull Dodge is really good on non-invulnerable troops, in the sense that, let's say, for example, a troop like Rafe, or whatever he's called, that does freeze and death mark per skull. If you dodge the skull damage, or, the skull attack, you will also dodge the freeze and the death mark, or, anything that they do on skull. So that's one benefit that skull has compared to damage mitigation, compared to like 40% reduction, 50% reduction, is it can completely dodge on skull effects. However, invulnerable is basically already doing that for you. So there isn't really much of a need. Like Agile is good, but the secondary benefit that you're getting from Agile doesn't do anything with Invulnerable, because you're already getting that benefit from Invulnerable. The only interesting thing about him is he does have Curse Bleed. If we ever get good bleed boost ratio teams in the future, he could be okay in that context, as Curse Bleed honestly isn't that bad, but you'd basically be just using him for Invulnerable Curse Bleed. His ability, you're literally just going to put him in 4th slot and he'll just sit there doing nothing other than his trait, which is probably not worth it in most situations, but if there's ever a really good curse bleed meta that comes into the game, I can see him actually being viable. But until that day, yeah, he's just never going to get used, even in his restriction. Next, we have ourselves the Immortal Terra. This deals a bunch of heavy True Splash, which of course is 75% to adjacents. It actually says it right there. I'm not sure why I keep saying it every time. I guess just to clarify, as splash damage is a relatively underutilized mechanic. I feel like they used it a lot in the past, but I feel like in the last few years they haven't added too many options that use it. But basically, light splash with 25% to adjacent, normal splash, or just a splash damage is 50%, and heavy splash is 75%. Keep in mind, the splash damage does do whatever the corresponding thing is. So in this case, it says true damage, so the splash will also do true damage. Whereas if it just says normal damage or, physical damage, whatever it says, it will just say, damage. It will do physical damage, not true damage, as in it will hit their armor first, whereas true damage hits their HP value. Anyways, if used in South Wild, it'll also deal double damage, and it destroys a row and a column, which you get to choose. So you get a little bit of control. You don't get to control where the damage goes, but you do get to control where the mana accumulation goes, and you could potentially land extra turns with this. Overall, not bad. You're definitely going to be using it in South Wild. As far as his traits, he's the tankiest out of all of them, a 50% scar reduction into invulnerable. So he has a lot of potential, not only on his ability, but also on his traits here. And oddly enough, based on the 10 we currently have, I believe he's actually the second strongest. I wasn't really paying too much attention to like what's the second or third strongest, just because Immortal Oifer is so many leagues above all of these other ones. But I would probably say this is the second strongest one. Very situational if you do bring it out, but if you need like a weird stun option on a true damage team, maybe he makes it in, as he's really tanky as a first slot option. He's very similar to Leona's Tower, actually. If you're currently using a Leona's Tower team, he has different mana than Leona's Tower. I believe Leona's Tower is yellow, blue, brown, whereas this is green, red, brown. So they only share brown together. But this could be a really good replacement. They both have 50% score reduction, they both have invulnerable, and they both have stun on their final trait. This creates a stun gem, whereas the other one, I forget what it does, but it does something stun related. So it really just comes down to a different ability, and if you were to compare their ability, I would definitely say this thing's ability is way stronger. However, it does use up your one immortal that you're allowed to use per team, so it does have that liability, but if that's not a factor on a given team because your team doesn't have an immortal on it, this is basically a one-to-one upgrade for Leona's Tower, assuming you don't need Leona's Tower for a specific coloration, which most of the time you're not really using him because of his colors, unless it's like a really specific restriction. So this is basically a one-up upgrade to your Leona's Tower. So any teams that kind of use them, he's the new Leona's Tower. Next, we have the Immortal Titanus, a bit of a weird one. There's a bunch of true scatter damage, but it doesn't really get a boost ratio that's relevant like many other scatter damages like Tesla and Rowan and similar things. And if it's used in Aedania, it will deal double damage, and it destroys 3 random columns, which you do not get to control, of course. Overall, it could be okay. It's just, the main thing that this is competing with, of course, is Tina 9000. And I believe in most situations, this does not beat out Tina 9000. Maybe in Aedania? So in those kind of situations, you might still use it in Aedania. However, just compared to a normal mech team, if you're running a 4x mech team, I don't think this is enough to replace out double Tina 9000. Because normally the mech team these days is Hero with Wand or any similar weapon, Bork, and then double Tina 9000 if you're building a 4x mech team. And of course, you could, in the current state of the game, now put the Immortal Titanius instead of the second Tina 9000, either because you don't own a second one, or you just want to switch things up, or get more stat bonuses, though it's mostly just armor that you're getting from those bonuses. But, I don't know, it's just not strong enough when you compare it to Tina 9000. In Aedania, it might be able to get away with some teams, but compared to a 4x mech team, I don't think it's strong enough to replace it. It does have invulnerable, of course, going for it, but it does have one of the weakest final traits here, create bomb gems. Bomb gems are really bad. They do the same explode as a Uber Doom Skull, so a 5x5 without the corners. However, they don't give any extra value, and unlike the Uber Doom Skulls, they can't be matched. So creating them doesn't give you any kind of immediate board alignment. Like the other guy here creates 2 burning gems you create 2 burning gems every single time its turn begins, which that means you can gain free mana. Creating 2 bomb gems does not create you free mana. If anything, it creates you less mana. Because I believe, due to its weird glitchiness, if you do, like, let's say a mass destroy, let's say Thrall or anything else that does it these days, and you destroy most, if not all, of the board, and you end up exploding these bombs only give 50% of the mana around them. So you could potentially be lowering your amount of mana accumulation, not just because the bomb counts as no mana, but so you're already minusing 2 mana every single time this spawns. but you're also potentially getting less because the radius that it's exploding, you're only getting 50% for, and sometimes it calculates out that mana really weirdly with how it does it, because some of it you're getting full mana for, the other you're getting 50% for, so it's really clunky and overall just a really bad mechanic, and I'm not sure why they keep adding bomb gems to stuff. That seems to be a fact of Adana now. It's just every mech needs to have just a bomb gem mechanic put on it, despite it probably honestly being the worst power gem in existence. I would even say it's worse than Lycanthropy gem. Not in its annoyance, but in its just lack of doing anything. If anything, just like negatively affects a battle rather than doing anything. At least Lycanthropy negatively affects a battle that is really annoying. This just negatively affects it in a way that's just really bad and boring. At least Lycanthropy, you feel something. You feel something when you get Lycanthrope, like the billion of time, and your whole team just immediately becomes a beast out of pure RNG, and there's nothing you can do about it. This, you just feel nothing. It just makes everything slower. Anyways, I'm not saying Lycanthropy is good, by the way. It is awful. But it is somehow, it is so awful that at least it's like an experience, whereas bomb gems are just bad. Anyways, this deals a bunch of true scatter damage as well, but this one's actually a little bit better. It's boosted by Fairy Fire gems. That's not the part that's better, nor is the double damage. The part that's better is its final trait. We just went over a whole rant on why bomb gems are bad, and this isn't a bomb gem, so it's better. It creates a Fairy Fire gem, which Fairy Fire is an enemy. This will not replace, I have no clue why, we still have not gotten a better option than Queen Titania for Fairy Firing as far as like a full package troop. But this still is not a better option, unfortunately. However, it is a option. It creates a Fairy Fire gem, which is a green gem, which means you can get alignment off of it when it gets created. But additionally, once you take it, that is 50% extra damage to whatever you end up getting Fairy Fired. And it could be a good alternative, well, I shouldn't say good, but it can be a alternative way, especially under the restriction of Summer Isle, to be able to go and get away with a Fairy Fire mechanic. Because you might not have access to it on the given restriction, and this will be the only way that you can add it. So in those kind of situations, it might have a little bit of a use case. Also has Arcane instead of creating bomb gems, so also good there. And of course, they all have invulnerable. But anyways, that's a full rundown on the troops. Don't really need to go over the weapons or pets. The pets just give +5, although it could go show them real quick. The pets that you end up getting from getting these guys, they give you +5 to all stats. This is pretty standard for boost pets these days. As soon as you get it, you'll be able to get +2 to all stats. So as I mentioned, at level 6 it was, I believe. You gain most of the benefit as you're already getting +2 to all stats the second you get the pet. Plus you could wear it on your shoulder if you like their design. So you get most of their benefit from then. However, as you get them all the way upgraded, I think it fully maxes around like 27-ish or so. You'll have the fully maxed pet, and then you'll have +5 to all stats. Obviously, the difference between +2 and +5, pretty minuscule. And you can already put them on your shoulder the second you get them at level 6 or so. So yeah, it's mostly just design if you like them. We have the one for the little dragon guy, the thing for the Pan's Veil one, and so on and so forth. We got the little firehead guy, whatever on this thing is. Got a little weird phoenix-looking bird. We got a really cool-looking skull for Oifer. I'm not sure why everything with Oifer is so good. Out of all the skull designs in the game, it's probably my favorite. Not that I'm big on the skulls, but it's definitely, I feel like, is my personal favorite skull design that they've done. And yeah, Oifer is just broken in every way, even visuals. Got a little pony here. I still don't have Takshaka. That's not related to this. I just don't have it yet. We have this little bull thingy. This one's probably my favorite. It's like a mech dragon design. And I like the concept of it. I'm not sure if design-wise this is the best way you could have gone about it, but the concept overall is really growing on me. It's probably my favorite one of them. You get that from the Adana one. And I got this cool little butterfly-looking thingy. But you get those at level 6. I keep saying level 6. I should probably reconfirm. I keep mentioning it like it is. I'm pretty sure it is. It's 6 for troop and 7 for... yeah, 6 for a pet and 7 for weapon. Okay, I was right. I am not forgetting. Anyways, aside from that, as far as burning chests are concerned, I don't think I ended up mentioning it when I mentioned it earlier, but you do get these little icons. These icons have 2 functionality. They basically, well, they have 1 functionality. They give you free VP points to be able to go and do each season. So when we have PvP seasons, you will end up needing on average 16,500 to do the season pass. If you're currently doing above 16,000, you're in the clear. You don't need to worry about it. If you're currently doing under 16,000 PvP points for the 11-week PvP system that's going to be coming up, so if you're currently doing less than 16k a week, but you're only doing like slightly less, let's say like 10k, there is a way to bypass that, so you won't actually have to need to play more necessarily. And that is these icons. You'll be getting these through the Season Pass occasionally. 33% of the Season Pass is free. The other 66% is paywalled. But you'll also be able to get them from all your burning marks. And these will give you a various amount of VP. I believe it was 750, 1,500, and 5,000. Apparently they buffed the gold one by a lot. But because I think it was lower earlier. but they give you several hundred, several thousand VP each. If you use them immediately, they will apply to the current season and will count towards your VP. So if you end up claiming these for a total of, let's say, 15,000 VP over the course of the season, that's 15,000 less that you need from the 180,000 total. However, they do have a secondary purpose. Let's say you are someone in the camp of doing over 16,000 a week. You're already doing over 16,000. You're probably easily doing over 20, 30, whatever you're doing currently. The secondary use for them is do not consume them, but save them. And going into the next season, as soon as the next PvP season starts, 10% of their total value will be given to the next season. This seems like a very small amount because it is. However, getting a head start on the following season by 10% could be beneficial if you're already the kind of person who's going to be you're already going to be hitting the goal every single time easily. So this will just kind of give you a head start on whenever the next one is coming around. So, you might have like 20,000 or like 20,000 points, and then the 20,000 gets downgraded to 2,000, and here you go. You have like 2,000 extra VP going into the next season. Is that really that worth it? Probably not. It's definitely more worthwhile to use them immediately, but it is for like the people that do already a lot of PvP that just want a little bit of a head start in a new season to use whatever new shiny thing that comes in with the new season. I believe it's mostly just loot, and you can earn it for free. However, of course, earning it quicker is always nice, and if you're doing the paid side to be able to get all those rewards quicker, also a nice factor. But anyways, is there anything else to really mention here? I don't believe so. That should be almost a full rundown. We went over Immortals. We went over Burning Chests. Went over PvPCs. I'm trying to remember too because I actually re-record this. Because for whatever reason, my OBS have been acting up the last few days. And I recorded this whole thing and have to re-record it again. So this whole time, oh yeah, we got 2 new achievements. I'm trying to remember what I did and didn't go over already. But there's 2 new achievements. One is to get 20,000 VP, which is pretty easy to do even this week if you want to go and do it. However, there is another new one, which you can't do until next week, which is upgrade an Immortal to level 10. This shouldn't be that bad. To get it to level 10, you need, oh gosh, how much was it? It was about 500, give or take a little. I forget the number off the top of my head now. But it was around 500 souls that you end up needing. This is doable probably within the first couple weeks or so, though with how they're spread, maybe it'll take a closer a month or 2, but it is definitely going to be pretty doable. It's not going to be that hard. You'll get it done passively just from doing PvP if you do all general PvP dailies. Oh yeah, this was the thing I was mentioning earlier. This is the whole reason why I actually want to bail Dark Alliance. Everywhere, or everyone who's not in Dark Alliance now has 20% more defense, or more stats when they're defending. Which means if you're in Dark Alliance now, or the winning one, if you're in the Alliance that's winning every single day, winning absolutely everything, well, you will be getting a lot more gold marks throughout the week. You have 30 more battles they have to do every single week, but on top of that, you will have to deal with a lot of people who you face having 20% higher stats while you have 0% higher stats. Whereas, I'm not sure why this doesn't mention it here, but if you're not in Dark Alliance, or not in the one that's winning at all, you have 0 citadels per week, you'll be getting 40% extra PvP stats, which is pretty substantial. I think the reason it's not in this patch notes is that technically it was done a couple weeks ago, not during this patch. However, it is relevant in combination with this, because if you're not in Dark Alliance, or aka the one that is winning every single citadel, you will have to deal with everyone else having 20% higher PvP stats, while also not having 40% higher PvP stats yourself. So worth considering. I'm going to try it for a season and see the difference, since I've already been in Dark Alliance since the patch happened. So I'm going to do that for a season, just kind of change. But as I mentioned earlier, make sure, probably right here. Does it say here? Yes, right here. Make sure you do not change Alliance until next week. It does not take place until Season 1 of PvP starts, and that's not until next week, Monday. So do not try changing your Alliance yet. However, once this does occur, you'll be able to change with not losing any of your VP or loyalty. So it'll be completely unaffected. But you have to wait until next week's Monday at least, and probably an extra day just to make sure it's not glitched, because it's going to be glitched. So give it an extra day period just in case, if nothing else. And it did a bunch of bug fixes. But you can read the whole patch notes, so I'll link it in the description if you want to go and catch it. But if you guys have any other questions, anything else I didn't go over, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. We did do a whole comprehensive stream the other night for like 2 hours where we went into all the nitty-gritty of everything. So if you want to see that, I will also have that posted somewhere here. You can just click it and get to that video, or stream I should say, if you want to see, if you haven't seen it already. But still, any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. I'll answer and look at absolutely any of them. And feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. And yeah, unfortunately, we don't get to do too much with this until Monday, but once that hits, we'll definitely be going over all the Immortals, most notably building teams for Oifer, as he's the only particularly over-the-top viable one, but also just seeing what we can do with these sections, as there will be a lot more viability in a lot of these sections now that we'll be able to go run in some annoying ones. Let's say, for example, I don't know, which one of these is like really weak? Let's say something like Daemon. I don't know, Daemon has some options, but let's say you're missing all the good Daemon options. Well, you can now use the Majra Expanse one, which is that one wild folk one we saw earlier. For example, this guy, the Marjora Expanse. So you'll always be able to use him. So even if you have absolutely no options for that, well, you do. Just use him and just build everything that you have around this guy and you're good to go. So this should make PvP a little bit easier, particularly for newer players who might lack a lot of the options you need. This will kind of fill the gap. And yeah, they basically added 10, 11 free mythics to the game, essentially. The only one of them, Oifer, being particularly viable. But I'll catch you guys later. Have a wonderful week. Best of luck with the season coming up. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it and see what we can ultimately do with the new goals system, the new season, and just get all of our loot from it. I'll catch you guys then. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.